When you and I go on holiday, we probably wake up, we spring out of bed, spring into the taxi, spring into the airplane, spring into the sea or the pool with loads of energy. Whereas if we're coming back and we're going into a job that we don't enjoy so much, we might have to drag ourselves out of bed and drag ourselves into the office. So when you really love what you do, you have lots of vibrant energy in terms of an acumen for love. And I think that's why it's so important to be able to get into that state of, can you have a look at, why do you love what you do? What are you good at doing what you're doing? And how do you add value to people? Or if, say, you're out there and you're trying to look for a sense of purpose, maybe like, I speak on stage, put yourself on a stage at 90 years of age in your mind's eye and ask yourself, what would you be most passionate about talking about? What vision could see yourself leaving in terms of a legacy? And then reverse engineer yourself back to where you are today and decide, okay, what do I need to do?
Doug, it is great to see you, and you are very welcome to the Inner Entrepreneur podcast.
Thanks, Paul. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Doug, I have only one question for you. Please tell me what success is.
Well, for me, the true meaning of success is to connect to your heart self rather than your head self. So you get out of the place of ego into a place of love and be able to decide what is your true mission and purpose in life, and then go out there and live it. And remember, it's not always about the destination or the result. It's about the enjoyment of the journey along the way. And that's the true success in life for me.
Well, that is a great answer, but I'm going to have to dig a little bit deeper. What amazes me about that is that I suppose it's very clear, very close to my own definition of success. I mean, it sounds like really what you're saying is we have to connect to our heart, to our soul, whatever you want to call it, and really understand what's going on inside and who I am, what I want. And the fulfillment of that, or the living of that, is how we create successful lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of men and women these days, but men in the past, they often were told they were having some kind of midlife crisis when they get to about 40 and stuff like that. And I think I would be probably accused of that as well. But I think what happens is you wake up one day and realize that you may have followed your father or mother down a path that was maybe not your own path. Maybe it was something that you were guided towards out of love from them, absolutely. But maybe it doesn't align to your true self, your true heart self, your true mission and purpose in life. So I always say, if you can find what you truly are gifted at in this lifetime, what you truly love doing and enjoy doing this lifetime, and find something through those that can add value to people in some way or form, maybe that might be a better path to follow. And I think that, for me, is real success in life. If you can find that, live that, and go out there and do that.
You said there, maybe, you said, at some point in your life, you wake up to this fact. And my immediate thought was, you woke up to that fact, but how many of the population, if you walked into Grafton Street tomorrow, we both live in Ireland, if you walked into Grafton Street tomorrow, of the thousands of people walking around, how many people ever wake up to that fact?
Absolutely. I would say very little. Many people. Okay. Yeah, they follow, the money, they follow wealth, they follow keeping up with the Joneses. And it's, I'll be happy when I have this. I'll be happy when I get that promotion. Yeah. I'll be happy when I have that house. And they're never happy. And whereas if you can live in the moment, enjoy their life and enjoy the simple things in life and be grateful for them, you might just find yourself happy in the moment rather than some time in the future.
And I think that doesn't stop you pursuing, well, in my worldview, it doesn't stop you pursuing what we might define as traditional version of success. I just think you view it differently. And I told this the story earlier on the podcast, but earlier this week I was at a dinner with a group of entrepreneurs, about 40 entrepreneurs in the room. And so we're sitting at a table, and kind of an icebreaker question is asked: what was your happiest day of the year, of your best day of the year gone by? And so we went around the table, and there were 5 of us sitting around this table, and each relatively easily told a story of what their best day was. And all of their best days included, all different, but all included being with their family. Every single one. It was an event. It could have been a wedding, a birthday, whatever, but they were with their loved ones. And so as you're around the table, and so some lovely stories, and I asked a question that just came to me. I said, guys, how is it we all instinctively know what our best day was, or one of our best days? And no one said, oh, the day I bought my new Range Rover. or the day I got this mega deal, or no one said that. How is it we all instinctively, intuitively know what our best days are? And yet we design, or most people design and live lives giving their time to the opposite.
Well, do you know what? That's a really, really good question and a really good observation as well, because I've met people who are multi-millionaires, even billionaires, and then I've met people who have very little. But what I find is some of these people who have very little remember that, and I'm going to get a bit spiritual here, but as spiritual beings having a physical existence, the greatest gift that we all actually have is the five senses, the gift of being able to see the sun, to see the stars and someone you love, the gift of being able to listen to the wind or the waves lapping up on the beach, or again, hearing someone say, I love you, Dad, or I love you, honey. And all of those five senses is what really people aim to feel, touch, experience in life. And sometimes money can help you in terms of being able to have different experiences to be able to heighten those senses. But realistically, we live in a beautiful place in terms of Ireland. We've got the likes of Glendalough, we've got the likes of Booth Head, we've got amazing, fun people. This is a wonderful country with wonderful people. And you can experience all of those relatively inexpensively. And obviously, the most fun and joy and happiness you tend to have is with your family, because you actually have a hug. You might have a kiss. You might have a laugh. You might eat some nice food or drink some nice wine. So you're experiencing all those five senses together at once. Whereas when you go out and just buy yourself a car, it's nothing. You don't get a hug. You don't have anything. Whereas I remember I did a deal one time. It's my biggest deal. It was about 580 million in the hedge fund world.
Only 580 million? Okay.
Yeah. Now, I will emphasize that we only made 0.5% per annum on that. Just so
but that's a lot of money.
But it was pretty decent anyway. And I, at the time, I was the king, and I was brought into the CEO's office, and we were all cheering. And I felt empty. I felt very, very empty because it wasn't really that spectacular. Whereas there was another experience that I had maybe about, it was during the pandemic, the second year of the pandemic. I was doing a virtual mental health room. There was a lady about to take her life, and she came onto the virtual platform. There's a bunch of us there, psychologists, psychiatrists, and some mindset coaches like myself. And I managed to talk her around, and then I managed to give her some coaching. And now she's an absolute inspiration on social media, helping other women that have been sexually abused the way she was. And to be able to see something like that, I literally spoke to her this morning. It makes me smile because that really shows that somebody was in the real dungeons of their life, and they were able to turn that around. And I was able to have a little bit of help in that as well. So making people happy in some way or form, I think, is the greatest gift you can give to yourself. So that would be for me, and if it's your family and somebody you love and sharing experiences with them, that's why I'd say all the entrepreneurs were saying that.
Yeah. Though, what I'm thinking, and I don't know if it takes in different directions, is that we can't take responsibility for making other people happy either. We can maybe contribute towards their happiness, but I think that's something we each have to take responsibility for, and we have to be very, very careful when other people are suffering, that we can help them, but we can't take responsibility for their happiness.
100%, Paul. And I always say to people, because there is a blame culture in businesses and in life. And I say that when you point the finger, there's always three pointing back. So if you can really take responsibility for your change and your personal health and your well-being, it's amazing when your energy is at a heightened, positive, loving state, that emanates around to all the people. And they might perceive you differently and act towards you differently, because what you give out, you get back. Your vibe attracts your tribe. And actually, one of the things I always say, it's in my book, that quite often people come up to me and say, oh, my ex or my ex-boss was a right narcissist. And I have an acronym for narcissist, which is neglected awareness reflecting conditions in suppressed self, instigating soul transition. And what I mean by that is sometimes the people that come into our lives, even the most difficult ones, are the ones that reflect back areas that we need to self-improve ourselves. There might be something just slightly suppressed in the back of the heart, in the back of the subconscious mind, that when we release, we grow the most. So be grateful for these people when they come into your life. Don't blame them for your own things, because you are the boss of you. and you can take responsibility for you. And most of the time, when people are projecting their crap onto you and they're being mean to you, whatever, it's not normally anything about you sometimes. It's just that hurt people sometimes hurt people. So if you can have the realization, the responsibility of understanding that, then you might be able to perceive what they're going through with a more empathetic and compassionate viewpoint. And that way you can help them. Now, I will say, because I'm a mindset coach, mental health guy, and healer, I do love helping other people because it's a job. And when you see the results come out at the end that you've actually helped them, then it can be very fulfilling as well.
I agree with you 100%. But it's also kind of a difficult one, because when we have people in our lives who are narcissists or who are difficult to deal with, and there seems to be two parts of what you're saying. One is that that's not about you. If you come on this podcast, you've never met me before, and I'm abusive or offensive to you, you can go, he's just an abusive individual. It's nothing to do with you. But when that's someone within your family circle or close friendship, that can be difficult. So that's one part of it. The other part is us taking responsibility for our reaction to that. I think that's what you're saying. So theoretically, 100% agree with you. On a practical level for people, do you find that that's difficult on a practical level when someone is in your day-to-day environment and they're narcissist, they're just a very negative and difficult person to deal with?
Well, most people who are narcissists are lacking self-love. They're lacking true confidence.
Yeah,
Outwardly,
I agree entirely. Yeah.
They can be incredibly confident, but inwardly they are very insecure. So I think when I perceive, because I've done a lot of psychology and mental health work, when I see that in somebody, I don't judge them. And I would have in the past probably judged them, and I would have told them that they're, blah, blah, whatever. But now I don't judge them anymore, because everybody's on their own path in a different way. And we don't know what they've been through. They might have had a very bullying father or mother or ex-partner or something like that, where they suffered so badly of that, feeling of abandonment or feeling of love or whatever it might be. So my viewpoint then is just to stay. If you imagine you've got two people here and this is them getting all this kind of stuff, sometimes what we do is we get wrapped up because we try and help them, or whatever. We get wrapped up in their energy, and then that happens. And then that can end up causing us to get a little bit aggressive or whatever as well. But if you can hold space, and I often say in a lot of relationships that separateness, in terms of your energy, separateness can bring togetherness. And what I mean by that is, if someone goes off and they have some hoo-ha at work, or something really bad happens, and they come back home, instead of getting wrapped up in their energy, if you can hold the space for them in a calm, collective state and send them love energetically, you don't have to actually hug them or anything like that, they might just find that energetically they calm down or they change because of the way you are as well.
But you're talking about holding your own space, allowing them to be in their aggravated state, but you're holding your own space.
100%. Yeah. That doesn't mean you sit there and you push over.
I agree entirely. Yeah.
But at the same time, you keep your strength through love, not your strength through getting wrapped up in their emotions. And that's why it's really important to be able to work on I think the most grounded version of consciousness is emotional intelligence, because it's self-awareness, people awareness, conscious communication, empathy, compassion, self-regulation, and self-motivation. So if you can really work on your own emotional intelligence in all of those aspects, you'll be a great leader, you'll be a great relationship person, you'll be a great salesperson, whatever it is. I think it's one of the most important things you can do.
I got a call towards the end of summer, and I got a call from a friend of mine, and she was stuck on her bike about 15 minutes from here. And so she'd gone it in a long cycle, and now she'd had this puncture, I think it was, and she couldn't fix it. So she can't ride her bike, and she's stuck, and she pulls kind of down off the side road, and she rings me and she rings my wife and to go, hey, can you help me out? I'm stuck here. So I go, there's no problem. I'll come and get you. So I shoot up there, and I'm conscious to get up there quickly because she's standing up there and you're off the bike and you're going to get a bit cold. So I shoot up there. But as I'm approaching where she is, I overtake another cyclist, a guy beavering along on his bike. And I overtake him, pull in, I go further up the road. But then I see where she is and I pull in. What I hadn't realized is the cyclist had kept very close behind me, and he wasn't expecting me to pull in. So when I pulled in, he was clearly too close to me. He didn't hit me, but he nearly came into the back of me. I wasn't aware of this. So as I stopped, he obviously gets a big fright, pulls by me, and he starts screaming and shouting at me like a lunatic. My friend sitting on a bike, she's watching this. He's screaming and shouting at me, a lunatic. I kind of pull over towards her. I'm thinking my initial reaction is to get away from him. And he goes to pull on. I go, no, I'm going to deal with this. So I stop my car and I drop down the window, and he comes over to me. Now he shouts a tirade of abuse, which I'm not going to repeat in this. And it goes on for about 20, 30 seconds, which I listen to. And so he's obviously reached a peak, has dropped down. And when he's finished, I go, mate, I am so sorry. I ride a bike. I said, I'm so sorry. I wasn't paying attention. And you could have hurt yourself. I said, I feel bad with this. I'm really, really sorry. Now, my logical mind is going, Paul, it wasn't your mistake. He was too close. But I still was sorry because maybe I could have. So I go, man, I'm really, really sorry. And he looks at me for a moment, and then he goes, like, maybe I was going too fast. I said, it doesn't matter, mate. I said, you're on a bike. I'm in a car. I should have been paying attention. And I feel it. And I feel what's happening to you because I cycle. And I'm really, really sorry. And he goes, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for shouting at you. You just gave me a fright. No. I said, don't apologize to me. So now he's profusely apologizing to me. And he goes, I said, relax, mate. Enjoy the rest of your ride. Don't. So he pulls away and then stops and comes back and goes, mate, I'm so sorry for shouting at you. I said, hey, forget about it. I'm sorry for pulling out. Have a great day. He pulls off. I pull over to my friend. And my friend goes, oh my God. She saw, but she didn't hear. She goes, oh my God, he must have been so angry. I said, no, we had a great chat. I said, he apologized, I apologize, and it's all good. But the reason I relay that story is because the energy he brought, because I responded differently, the whole situation changed. And had I responded to him with anger, those are the sort of situations that turn into screaming rows, me getting out. You can imagine the terrible, sometimes tragic situations they lead to. So I've learned that lesson in those situations. Behave differently. It won't always change someone's behavior. In my experience, a huge amount of the time it does.
100%. I love that story. That's brilliant. And that's a prime example of one, holding space, two, showing empathy, compassion, understanding. Say you've been there yourself. I mean, brilliant. Absolutely. And self-regulation as well. Like that's pure emotional intelligence. That's just brilliant. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
We spoke earlier about meditation. And as I said to you, thankfully, when I was about 19 years of age, I was introduced to meditation. I've been to India several times. And so I have 40 years at it now, daily practice. And I think, I don't know if you're a meditator, but the gift that gives me is not always, but often presence. And it gives me that moment. Deepak Chopra used to speak about the gap. And so it gives me that moment of presence between that event happening, and of course I'm human, and a moment ago, hey, relax. It gives me that moment where I get to decide. And that's maybe what most people don't have.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I meditate a lot as well. I actually put my own meditations together, both chakra meditations to connect to your higher self, meditations for healing, because I'm a master teacher healer of 5 modalities of healing. And yeah, people think meditation's all about the woo and all that kind of stuff. But actually what it does is it helps you center yourself, ground yourself, and connect to your heart self and listen to your breath. And it's, for people out there that are suffering, I know there's a lot more these days being diagnosed with ADHD. It actually really helps you in terms of your concentration as well. Because even if you can start by sitting there listening for 5 minutes to your breath, just in and out, and sending love to yourself. So I often tell people to breathe in with love to their heart and then breathe out with love to any extremity within your body to try and heal yourself or make you feel more relaxed. But meditation is also very powerful. Like, for example, I interviewed Jamie Heaslip, the ex-Ireland international rugby captain, and he was telling me he meditates to visualize. And it's very powerful because when you put yourself in a meditative state, you hold a visualization in your mind. Like I used to play Premier League hockey, so I would actually visualize in a meditation, right winger running down the line, flicking it back to the top of the D and me knocking at the top of the corner of the net. And it was amazing how often that happened, because when you put yourself in the energy of something, you often bring more of it to you as well. And meditation can be very powerful for that, for stress relief, for visualization, and also just grounding yourself as well. So I love it. Absolutely love it.
You mentioned earlier that you were a healer, which I was aware of, and yet it kind of seems incongruent for someone who's a success coach and probably mostly works with businesses and CEOs and that sort of stuff. So, but I would love to hear a little bit more about that. What led you to being a healer, and what does it mean to you?
Well, so as you know, I worked in the financial services world and
Doing small half.
Yeah, look, I'm very grateful that I worked for some great companies, managed to do some good deals, and managed to get in the newspapers actually because of growing businesses in that respect. But then I had in 2008, as many will remember, the markets fell through the floor. We lost billions. And at that point, we had to let go of a lot of people. I was working for a particular company. I won't mention who they are. And at that point, I got stressed because although I was fine, I was seeing friends of mine, and there was very much an energy in the London city at the time. I am Irish, although I don't sound it. There was an energy in the London city at the time of worry and fear. And that energy was felt by people, especially when you go on a train and public transport. So I ended up getting stressed and ended up getting certain stress-related ailments that led to doctors and specialists and 2 operations that went wrong. And then I had 4 years of chronic pain, like I was being punched in the stomach all the time. And then I got the norovirus in 2013, which was like a stomach bomb. Like basically, my electrolytes were down to 0 after 10 days of dehydration. We'll go into that. And then I was rushed to A&E, rushed to X-ray, and I had this near-death experience where I was encapsulating this amazing feeling of love, energy, and connection. There was no man with a beard, but there was this conscious energy that was surrounding me and connecting me that was just like pure love. And obviously I came back, otherwise I wouldn't be speaking to you here today. And I realized that I wanted to change my life in some way or form. And initially, selfishly, I wanted to make sure that I healed myself. So instead of going to loads of doctors, I used to go to doctors probably maybe once a week, consistently for a period back in kind of 2008, 9. And leading up even up to 2013. But once I got into mindfulness, healing, meditation, and all of that, maybe since 2013, I've been twice. So it just shows you that when you can really get mindfully into your own self and learn a few healing modalities, it's amazing how you can heal yourself, look after yourself, and prevent things happening as well. So that's how I really got into it. And that led to the meditation, learning, and everything like that as well.
It's interesting you spoke about the energy in London City at that time. I was in Ireland at the time. I suppose it was similar. When you talk about energy, we're getting very woo-woo for me bringing on the guy who wrote the success book, but let's follow where the conversation goes. When you talk about energy you felt in London, is that what is that energy you were experiencing? Is it a real thing? Because people listening to this are going to go, what are these guys talking about?
Okay, well, this is a great question, and people better empathize with this, right? So, how many people out there, right? You walked into a room where 2 people have just had an argument, and you can feel the tension in the room, and you feel like turning around and running straight back out. Or alternatively, you might be really tired. You've had a really busy week, and you've got a conference or a party or something like that to go on the Thursday night, the Friday night. And you say to the wife that, you don't really want to go, let's go, we'll come home at 9 o'clock. But then you turn up and the party's amazing. Like it's just buzzing, great fun, great banter. You end up dancing your socks off on the dance floor to like 2 a.m., something like that. And you might have even had a few drinks, but you still feel great the next day because you've had such a great time. What is that? Well, that's energy, of course, dissipating from one person to the next. So when we go
in your worldview, is it actually dissipating? If we could measure it, would we actually find something dissipating? Is that your sense? Do you think it's a real thing, I suppose, is what I'm asking.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll give you examples. And again, this might sound a little bit woo, but I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So I was doing a healing on a guy who had a completely banjaxed thumb. And it was in my early days of my healing, so I didn't ground myself enough.
Okay.
And when I did the healing on him, it healed him. But I had a really sore thumb for the next 2 weeks. Yeah. And I did another lady who she was supposed to be going for an operation for her stomach. And I did a healing on her. She didn't need the operation, but I had a really dodgy stomach for the next few days. So and even slightly different, but similar in terms of energy, that when you put yourself in the energy, you bring more of it to you. And this is slightly different, but it'll give me an example. I was speaking as the main keynote speaker at the Institute of Directors Global Convention for India, and I was surrounded by people like the chairman of Cobra Beer, foreign secretary of India, and many other amazing people. And we're talking about sustainability and climate change, and that was the kind of theme of the convention. And I hadn't seen my daughter for a while. I'm divorced, and I was thinking about her, and I wanted her to reach out. So I left the conference, went to Heathrow because it was over in London, got on the plane, sat on the window seat, and within 2 minutes, this guy came up with his daughter, sat next to me, and he had his daughter, who was 1 year old, started reaching out to me. And then I started chatting to him because I love kids. And I found out that he was a sustainability and climate change consultant for one of the big consultancy firms. And to his right in the aisle seat was his wife, who was Indian as well. So there's something like when you're in the energy, you bring more of it to you. And when you're in the energy of other people as well, you can potentially pick up on that energy. And they do say that your average of people that you hang around with or that you listen to.
Well, they've proven that to be factually, scientifically true.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And, you know, I've always questioned that, do you need to, be with a wife or a girlfriend or something like that who's a, wealthy, successful person as well? I don't think so, because as long as they're kind, loving, and they support you in whatever you're doing, and you don't need to, buy into the fact they need to be rich and wonderful as well. They just need to love you and you love them. So I would say that, because I know there's some people who've said to me before, do I need to find a partner as well that, is like that? And I said, no, as long as you love them and they love you, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, if you're hanging around with a bunch of clowns, it can affect you. And actually, on the energy thing, something that is really worth looking at. There's a guy called Dr. Emoto, who's a Japanese, well, he's actually dead now, but he was a Japanese professor. He was nominated for the Nobel Prize. His name is Emoto. You can look him up. He has a Wikipedia and everything like that. And he did this experiments on water. So you get a glass of water, say like this, or a container of water like this. You write a label on it, say love. And then he'd have another one and he'd write a label of hate. And another one he'd write gratitude on it. And he'd give those 3 containers of water to separate people in separate rooms, like the students in his Japanese university. And they would speak to the water and say, I love you, I love you, I love you, hate, 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 and gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And he did thousands of experiments, so I wasn't just once. And he put this water then into a freezer, froze it for 3 days, took it out and looked at the molecules. And have a look online, you'll see it. The molecules of the love and the gratitude and anything positive had these snowflake-like, diamond-like shapes with perfect symmetry. And those that had the hate or the negative stuff had no symmetry, and it was all over the place. Now, our bodies are made up of 65% water. So if you're negatively talking to yourself or hanging around with sarcastic or negative people, that potentially could have an effect on your energy flow within your body and the way you might feel. So that's why I think energy and that kind of stuff, and it's proven through the science of what I've just said, is actually very, very important.
I have a practice that I don't often talk about that would be considered very, very woo-woo. And thankfully, I've very little, if any, conflict in my life. But there were times when I had lots of conflict in my life, lots of people I was conflicting with. And I had this practice because I was a lifelong meditator that I would, in my meditation, I would think of this person I had a lot of conflict with. And I would first acknowledge that the conflict was mine. And so, like we're talking about earlier, if whatever the person's behavior was is a separate thing, could be dealt with separate. But if that was stimulating something in me, anger, resentment, judgment, that was mine. I would take ownership for that. So in my meditation, I would see their image. I would recognize that it was really me reflecting them. And then in my meditation, I would send them love. I would speak it, but I would send it in my mind. And I would do this over and over again. Now, sometimes that would stir all these emotions in me, but I would continue to do this, maybe over a long meditation or over a period of days or weeks. I would continue to send them this love until I got to a point where when I sat and saw them in meditation, I would feel absolute love for them. And it's a woo-woo thing to say, and I cannot believe I'm saying it publicly. Blame you on that. So, but anyway, so I would do this, and what I'm going to say about it is that it's never failed me. It's never failed me. Now, the interesting thing is that when I would come out of that meditative state, I may still have an issue to deal with that person. And it doesn't mean I'm now, I think you said this earlier, it doesn't mean I'm now a pushover, far from it, but I will deal with the situation out of a point of love. I will protect myself, obviously, but I will deal with you from a position of love, and I will want to do you no harm, but that doesn't mean you can screw me. Honestly, it sounds crazy, and it's never let me down.
Yeah, no, do you know what, Paul? I was back in when I was working, and this is in the press, I'm not giving anything away. When I was working for Columbia Threadneedle back in 2012 or 13, I think it was, we had on our emerging market debt fund, we had a rogue trader, and I had sold about 285 million quid's worth to Jupiter Asset Management, which is one of our big clients. And at that point, I remember that, obviously with the rogue the deal got stopped. It was a Russian guy dealing with a Russian brokerage. But the FCA, which is the Financial Conduct Authority, which is like the central bank over in England, came down on our company like a ton of bricks, particularly on this particular team. And after about 6 to 9 months, they got fed up of being hounded, and they ended up leaving and going to Standard Life. One guy stayed, a Brazilian guy who I think probably because his language skills weren't that good, he didn't go with them, he stayed. He's a very good fund manager. Anyway, but I remember at the time, my boss, my CEO said, "Oh, the money's going to walk up. It's like, it's like the top footballer Messi leaving Barcelona, whatever, they're not going to keep the money here." But I said to them, I set a goal on myself. I said, look, I know these guys, and I have faith and a knowing in myself that I could change this and help. So, I rang up and, told them that the guys had left, but there's a good guy left. It's still on the team, and would they interview him to potentially keep the money with him? But I also knew that just in case they moved the money, they could save on capital gains tax by maybe moving it to one of our other funds within our organization rather than taking it somewhere else. So I went in, and the other fund was a European equity fund. So I brought the emerging market debt guy, Brazilian guy, and also the European equity guy. And I remember sitting there, and I coached the guy, the EMD guy, the emerging market debt guy, a bit on how to present and all that. But he wasn't good because it was English. Yeah. And, I could see the 3 fund managers from Jupiter on the other side looking at him and I read their energy. It was quite obvious they weren't impressed. And I sat there, like what you just kind of talked about. I sat there and I started sending love to my fund manager in a kind of imagining that my heart was emanating this kind of like, a bit like the Force in Star Wars, this energy and love out to him, at them. And then I imagined a sense of love between them as well in my mind's eye. And no joke, Paul, I promise you, literally within 5 to 10 seconds, suddenly the fund manager stopped talking about process and started talking about how he makes the trades, what he likes in the economy, what he sees in the economy, and his energy changed. And then I could see that the slumped energy of the fund manager suddenly sit up like this. And suddenly I saw there was a connective energy between them. And it ended up being a much better meeting than I thought. We walked out. I brought the European guy in, similar, but he was a good presenter anyway, but I still send that love energy. And a week later, I got a call from them. They'd done all their analysis. They made their decision, and they decided to keep the emerging market debt fund. And within the next year, they added another 250 million into that. And they added the European fund, and they added over 300 million into that as well. But I truly believe that energy that I projected out there helped. And I think that can really help in all relationships and walks in life.
I would say there's no doubt about it. And there may be people thinking these guys are crazy, but my conversation is aimed at a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs. And if you're in that space, I think your energy is huge. Your presence is huge because you're influencing the people that work for you. You're influencing your clients. And I remember similarly back in 2008, 2009, in the Irish market, our business fell by 60%. And it was extraordinarily difficult to try and we're in sales and distribution, so it's extraordinarily difficult to motivate people. And I used to have these conversations with my father, and I'd have these conversations with my father every week, and he'd always go, "Hey, how's business? How are things?" And I would, being an optimistic, upbeat person, I would go, "Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to, yeah." And he would always come back in, "Oh yeah," but he would always tell me everything that was wrong. I would go, "I'm planning, we're going to do this." "Oh, that won't work." And so every conversation that I would put up, I'd go, "But yeah, but I'm thinking if we did this, blah, blah, blah." And he would always this went on for several months, and eventually I said to him one day we met up, and how are things? And I said, "Dad, I can't do this with you anymore. I cannot have this conversation with you anymore." I said, because we have this conversation and you get on with your day, but I don't. I walk back into my business and I have to convince these people in here that we are going to make it out of this. Of all the companies that listen to RT1, all the companies are going to fail, we're going to succeed. I said, I believe that. I said, you can't convince me otherwise, because I'm with these people every day. I can't bullshit them. I can't go in and go, hey guys, we're going to make it. Here's the reasons. Because if I don't believe that, they're with me all day long. They will pick it up. I said, so I can only be in an environment not where I'm foolish or reckless or careless, but an environment where I feed that energy that goes, we can come out of this, we can come out of this. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't carry you. So you just, and I felt cruel doing it, but I knew it was essential because I couldn't. What it had a huge impact, it had a big impact on me. But I mean, at the time, I would say I felt we as a company lifted out of the doom and gloom 18 months before the Irish economy lifted. In other words, a few things came in our favor, a couple of big projects that we won that began to turn our business around before the rest of the economy caught up and everyone said it was over. So in a very practical way, I think it's something we need to be mindful of.
Oh, 100%. I totally agree. I think something in terms of intention, and as you as the leader of the business, holding that intention, holding that energy, holding that confidence, that can really help in terms of everybody else. Because, as the leader of the business, you need to be able to communicate, connect towards those collective goals. And if you don't have that vision and that meaning and that purpose and that knowing, and for the people who might want to know what knowing is, I'd say, if your name is Paul, do you think your name is Paul? Do you believe your name is Paul? Or do you just know your name is Paul? You know it. So you have to really have that sense of knowing of what you want, understanding that there's going to be ups and downs. It doesn't just go like that. But regardless of the ups and downs, your vision and your strength in holding that vision can bring you to where you want to achieve those goals. And it's incredible how powerful that is. I mean, I think Richard Branson talks about in many of his things, he says, he didn't really know the difference between profit and revenue. It didn't really matter because he had the vision in his head. He held that as the statesman for the company. And because he held that in such strength and belief and knowing, everybody just followed it and it was successful. So if you can get into that state, very powerful. And that's why obviously you were very successful in your business.
And I think that state doesn't require us, that state, well, my version of that state of knowing. I also knew that there were enormous challenges in the environment. I knew there were enormous difficulties, but I remember speaking to someone in the company about it one day, and they asked me about the recession, and I said, it's not my recession. It's the recession. It's not my recession. And I'm not responsible for Ireland, Europe, or the global economy. I'm responsible for Paul. I'm responsible for this business. So we're not having a recession. We might have to work hard at this. So I think it's not. I mean, Tony Robbins, you said something many years ago that struck with me. He said, it's not about going to your garden and going, there's no weeds, because that's just called bullshitting yourself, and the picking weeds are there. It's about going to your garden and going, there's weeds. Okay, acknowledge it. I don't bitch about the weeds. I don't wish they weren't there. I go, okay, weeds. I need two things. I need a shovel. I need a wheelbarrow. I maybe need some weed killer. And and then when I've sorted all that, I'm going to put some topsoil down. I'm going to plant some grass, grow some seeds. I'm going to water. So you acknowledge what's there, but you very quickly go, okay, what's the strategy? What's the strategy to deal with this?
Do you know that's 100% actually? I was just talking about this the other day, that in a lot of companies now, they obviously use the DISC format or the DISC methodology, or they use Myers-Briggs to characterize people's behaviors. But they don't, and that creates the awareness, which we were talking about, obviously. So you have an idea where you are. But what I do in my coaching is I then have a methodology in terms of purpose-driven awareness methodology we've had, is to then bring people out of that to where they may be potentially a better colleague or a better performer. And that's the important thing, to be able to get there. And if you can have that state of awareness and understanding, okay, what are my triggers, traumas, parental programs, things that don't work for me, and understand them through a state of awareness, but then be able to think, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to completely get rid of them, but when I have that awareness, I can catch myself out in the moment. So if it's something like maybe being fearful of not being good enough or imposter syndrome or something like that, maybe you can just go, oh, hold on a minute. It's that little demon on that shoulder shouting a bit louder than the angel on this shoulder. I need to brush that aside and ask myself or ask my ego, is that really my truth?
Sure.
Because I am good enough, I am worthy enough, and I can achieve this. And as what it was Henry Ford says, if you think you can, you can.
Yeah.
If you think you can't, you can't. So I think that's very important to be able to get into that state. And, self-check at times. Look at, the interaction maybe that I had with Paul. Was I speaking in a clear fashion? Was I coming from ego or heart? Was I trying to add value or look good? And that way you can get an idea of trying to understand where you were on self-check and hopefully over time self-improve. Because I think sometimes when people do coaching with me, they sometimes start looking at their flaws and they think, oh my God, what am I like? Oh no. But I don't want them to focus on them, but I just want them to be aware of them so that they can catch back. Because there's quite a lot of people who I know who are amazing multimillionaire leaders and they bulldoze their way up to the top and they have no idea of the carnage they've left with other people potentially behind them. And there are other great leaders who are inspirational leaders who create inspiration rather than motivation, which is motivation is beating someone over the head with a stick or offering them loads of money. Whereas inspiration is getting people to really believe in something in a sense of purpose and bring them along the way on that as well in terms of buying into that. So I think it's really important to have that state of awareness so that you can change if you want awareness and accountability and maybe some acceptance, because sometimes I can tell you there's something in you as a coach, but you might not believe it, you might not accept it. But if you accept it and truly embody it that you want to change, then you can make that change and become a better version of yourself.
I suppose that at some stage we will all experience imposter syndrome or self-doubt. I mean, that's human nature. And particularly, we come on a podcast of this and you speak and you coach people and you've written books. And so people may go, well, it's okay for Doug because he's there. You know what I mean? And I'm not. And I suppose my perception is that everyone has this, but not everyone is led by, not everyone is driven by it. I think the danger is that when you deny it, when you kind of strut it up and kind of self-doubt and you deny it, I think what you're saying is you acknowledge it, but you kind of go, I hear you. I'm not pretending that I don't. And that's the narcissist we spoke about earlier. The narcissist is the guy sticks their chest out and goes, no, I'm a great guy. When you go, really, when the doors close and the lights go off, they're terrified. So I would feel that awareness is important, that you acknowledge it. And then, as you say, you brush it off or at least decide to bring your attention somewhere else.
Yeah, 100%. And don't get me wrong, you might think, oh, I've got the book and, won a few awards and all that kind of stuff. I have days where I feel a little bit depressed or down. Or I have days where, I might be stressed. I have children, which, teenagers who I love with all of my heart. At times, though, it can be difficult. I always say, if you're a parent out there, never give a teenager advice because you're adding vice. Just try and guide them through your own characteristics and your own goodwill, and they might model you as well. So very important to do that. And it takes a lot of learning to be able to do that. And the other thing as well is that we don't own our children. I always say it's very important to try and create non-attachment. Love, absolutely, but non-attachment in terms of they are their own people and you need to allow them to be their own people as well. So going back to what you're saying, what I often do is I get people to have a look at the state of awareness in terms of whether they're self-aware flaws, maybe have a look at the 5 people around them in their vicinity. So you might choose a mum or a dad because you tend to model them in the first 7 years of your life. But then have a look at the people around you and what do they sabotage themselves with? What do you not like about them? And then maybe have a look at those characteristics and reflect back and see if they're in you. And then the other thing I like to do is I like to ask people. So I asked my dad, because he would be my biggest critic at times in the past, although he's much more on board there. But in the past, I would say to Dad, I'd say, look, what do you think? Where do I need to self-improve? And he'd be like,
wow, that's brave.
You write it all down and then you add it to the list. So you get a comprehensive list. And I've actually had in this particular room, I had a 6'4" ex-American pro footballer who came over here. He's older and he was working for Salesforce as a director. And we were doing this. In terms of he was going through his self-aware stuff. So he was going, at times I feel fearful of being loved. At times I feel abandoned, whatever it might be. And he was crying because he had that realization that he hadn't really been aware of it before. and he was being vulnerable, and it released something in him.
Mm.
And then once he's released it, then I gave him a list of, okay, now I want you to put I am positive opposites. So let's say, you are worthy of love. So you say, I am worthy of love. I am, a lot of men aren't great at listening to their wives when they come home and vent. I would say, I am listening with love and understand the other person's perspective. So you have a list. I always get them to have a list of all positives. Put it next to there where they do their teeth on the mirror, and they can say them twice a day when they do their teeth to implement neuroplasticity into the brain in helping them think, speak, and act differently. Because in results, in our businesses, the results that we get come from the actions that we take. The actions that we take come from the decisions that we make. The decisions we make come from the habits that we create. And the habits that we create come from the way we think, the way you speak, and the way we act, our mindset. So if you can change the way you think, speak, and act, you might find the results change as well. And that's why that's so important.
I think this notion of neuroplasticity, which is relatively recent, I don't know, in the last 20 years or so, that we've understood this, that the mind is a muscle almost that you can train, which means when we are, for me, it's not about negative and positive, but when we're drawn into those negative feelings and emotions, which we all have, which are natural to have, but if we dwell on those, if we let our mind dwell on those, then we're carving neural pathways, we're firing up neural pathways, and we're strengthening those neural pathways. What sounds like you're saying is that we need to also consciously do the opposite. Have the list that remind us of how good I am, all these sort of things. And we have these because as we repeat those as well, we're wiring those positive or supportive, helpful neural pathways.
100%, Paul. And, you're the person who talks to yourself the most. And, sometimes we talk to ourselves in the worst possible way, like our worst enemy. And it's really important to talk to yourself in a positive way. You need to be your number one cheerleader. And sometimes when we have that emotion and commotion, which at times we do, in terms of like what you talked about that story, and you did it brilliantly in terms of taking yourself out of that and almost putting yourself on the 10th floor and looking back down into this situation and asking yourself, okay, what is happening here? How can I learn from this situation? How can I grow from this situation? How can I turn this mess into a message to give it meaning, to maybe help me or other people in the future in some way or form? And when you take life more like a game, in terms of understanding each of these individual things that might happen in your life as almost like a PlayStation game that you have to try and get around as the most emotionally intelligent, kind-hearted way, it actually makes things a bit easier if you reframe it in that fashion.
I know you've worked with some very successful people. So what I'm wondering, based on the conversation we've had for the last almost hour, when you go into a boardroom or celebrity, someone very outwardly successful, how open are they just expecting you to give them the success formula that is all outward? Or how open are they to this conversation of this inner world, which is clearly hugely important to you? How open are they to that is what I'm wondering.
Well, that's a really good question, Paul, because I'll give you a couple of examples.
Please.
And so there was a C-level exec, and I know he doesn't mind me saying this because he's given me a LinkedIn recommendation, and he is the CIO of Dell, and he's a super guy, really super guy. But when we started coaching, I was coaching him. He was 61 at the time. And I said, right, we're going to do some goals. We're going to have a look at, the areas of your life. We're going to have a look at the relationships you have within the business. We're going to help them improve. I'm going to help you with your presentation skills, your communication skills, your negotiation skills, all that kind of stuff. But I also want to do this self-awareness technique with you to help you in terms of maybe, in terms of all your interactions in life, including with yourself. And he said, Doug, I'm 61 years of age. Really, and I just said to him, look, just go for it. Just try it. So he went full on. Fair play to him. He went full on. And after we did it, he came back to me and he said that his relationship with his wife was better than ever because I think he was actively listening to her more. He was more empathetic. He was more personal. He was understanding certain traits that maybe he was playing that he hadn't before. He also found that he got his best 360 with his boss and everybody within Dell ever. And his dad and him hadn't spoken for a while. And suddenly they started speaking again and playing golf together. And one of his schoolmates who he hadn't seen in like, or hadn't spoken to in like 30 years, rang him up and invited him to his daughter's wedding.
Wow.
So I believe that his vibe had changed. So his vibe attracted different, or people perceived him energetically in a different way, and they treated him in a different way. So it's really powerful. I'm one of the guy who did this actually in Dell as well. He was head of sales, and he literally got, I think, all of his direct reports, his brother, his mother, and his wife, to give him the feedback of the third party views.
Very brave.
He liked it so much. And, his LinkedIn recommendation, the final sentence says, at the start it says, I took Doug on as an executive coach. And at the end it says, I can see him now as a friend for life.
Wow.
And that's because there is an impactful change of genuinely want to help people. Obviously, look, I'm a business guy, right? So I developed a business. I developed a radio show from 0 to 350,000 people listening. I developed a book that sold 10,000 plus all around the world. A lot of different things where I have traits that I can help people. I've spoken on stage, as I said, in the Institute of Directors, alongside people like Niall Quinn, this footballer and stuff like that. And, I've done that through the ways of knowing how to do business, knowing how to communicate, knowing how to build relationships. So obviously I help them with that, but also I help them with their inner work as well, so that they can be mental. Because when you are mentally not the best state and emotionally not the best state, you're going to waste energy. And when you get to an 50 plus like me and yourself, you need to manage your energy effectively so you can get the most out of yourself when you're performing in the business. And they say, your health is your wealth and all that kind of stuff. So I do focus. I have CEOs. I have one particular CEO I've been working with for 7 years, and we will do. I've rearranged his sales commission. I've helped him get big £1 million deals. But I will also do a healing on it to make sure his energy is realigned. Because what happens is people go in and meet crappy people. They go into the supermarket. They feel jaded. They might go into a pub with this bad energy, whatever it is. And they feel like one lady who's a European attorney, and she comes out sometimes with a bit of baggage and crap, having been in the courtrooms, and she needs a bit of a spring clean. So I do a spring cleaner. She feels great after. It's like an internal massage and stuff.
Yeah.
So that way they can get into a better energetic state to perform better, think better, act better, and are more emotionally intelligent as well.
I can imagine people think it sounds like woo-woo, but last summer I was invited to an event for business owners, and this company were trying to pitch, I suppose, coaching services. And honestly, I had no real interest in signing up, but my interest was just because this is what I do. My interest was in going along and seeing what they're doing, seeing what they're selling. It was kind of an interesting day, but they spoke, and I can imagine they would be of help to people, but they spoke to me only of the external level. So they spoke only about the strategies, the techniques that small business owners would use. And the thing about small business owners, which that I am, we don't have a huge corporate structure of support. It's usually just a guy and he's, 2 or 20 people or whatever. So that's kind of people, that was the kind of people in the room. But as the day went on, for me, there was an emptiness to it. And the emptiness is that ultimately you give strategies and you make and guidance, coaching to a business owner. But it comes down to whatever you teach that business owner, they have to deliver on it. And that's where the personal challenge is. And if there's no internal support in relation to mindset or soul set, and I love that you spoke about that heart versus ego, because that ultimately, that is there whether we're aware of it or not. And I felt, to me, the day felt empty because there was no part of nurturing the inner world. I suppose it's what motivated me to start this podcast, was because I speak to connect with a lot of business owners. I suppose they're my tribe, but so many of them are just engrossed in the outer world and not connected with the inner world. And if that's the life you choose, no matter how successful you become, you will remain unfulfilled.
My own dad, I remember, he said, it was a couple of Christmases ago, he said to me, he retired, he was very successful. He was an orphan, actually, and worked his way up to a multimillionaire. His last job was president of Fidelity Investment. He actually started with Fidelity up in Ireland here, and reported straight into Ned Johnson, who owned the company. And Dad said to me, he retired at 55, he sailed around the world, he did the Atlantic twice, and all. But he said to me, he retired because he worked for money. He didn't work for really the enjoyment of it. My brother's a doctor. He's a great doctor, fantastic doctor. But, I asked him, how's his job going? He's going, yeah, fine, but he doesn't have that kind of like, oh yeah, I really love it, kind of thing. And that's so common with so many different people. And I think what happens is remember, money is a return for energy, experience, or time. And if you have great energy, then, you're going to up the potential of what you can earn. So let's face it, when you and I go on holiday, we probably wake up, we spring out of bed, spring into the taxi, spring into the airplane, spring into the sea or the pool with loads of energy. Whereas if we're coming back and we're going into a job that we don't enjoy so much, we might have to drag ourselves out of bed and drag ourselves into the office. So when you really love what you do, you have lots of vibrant energy in terms of an acumen for love. And I think that's why it's so important to be able to get into that state of, can you have a look at, why do you love what you do? What are you good at doing what you're doing? And how do you add value to people? Or if, say, you're out there and you're trying to look for a sense of purpose, maybe like, I speak on stage, put yourself on a stage at 90 years of age in your mind's eye and ask yourself, what would you be most passionate about talking about? What vision could see yourself leaving in terms of a legacy? And then reverse engineer yourself back to where you are today and decide, okay, what do I need to do? What paths do I need to follow? Who do I need to model to be able to stand on that stage, give that speech and leave that legacy? Or if you are in a job that it's your business, like yourself or whatever, and you don't want to leave or you're not going to leave because you've built this up for so long, just have a look at the energetics of what you do and how you add value to the end customer. Even if you're the secretary, you might be helping you as the CEO and you're helping people through the IT and the hardware structure that you're putting in place to make people's life easier, better security, whatever it might be in terms of the infrastructure of the business, but helps people. And when you can see the energetics of what you do and how it aligns to somebody's life being bettered in some way or form, maybe that might give you a little bit extra zest for what you do in some way.
Doug, one of my motivations for bringing you on the podcast was my first question, what is success? Because you've written this book about success. And here we are approaching the end of the podcast and I haven't asked you about your book, but it's been a very enjoyable conversation. I'm wondering, we've talked about so many things and so many versions of success. What was your motivation for writing the book?
Well, the motivation for writing the book is I went out in the corporate world, investment world, and I had success.
Yeah.
And I did enjoy it. But at the time, I did get stressed, and that had led to elements and certain things. Now, I still performed while I was in that state. I realized that since then, I developed some tricks and tips and tactics to be able to help manage stress better, manage emotional intelligence better, learn how to make better communications with other people and my own self, and also manage my energy better as well. So I wanted to relay that information to other people. And obviously I had a radio show as well, as you know, and I interviewed over 300 people on my radio shows called Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. And during that time period, I learned what success was to other people as well. Not about money necessarily, but success. So I implemented the ideas that I had experienced myself and the ideas from those 300 people, and a lot of them are New York Times bestsellers, film stars, sports stars, and top CEOs, to be able to, try and give some kind of manuscript to help others in some way or form. And that was my aim of the book, because I feel that if I went through all this crap, I think it would be inappropriate of me to come down to this planet and not share it to try and help somebody else in some way or form, in terms of turning my mess into a message to give it meaning to help other people in some form. So that's what I've done in the book. It talks a lot about, I have an acronym in there. I've got a couple of acronyms, which is make success or make it happen, make a good relationship, make your goals happen, which is mindset, actions, knowledge, energy. Mindset, obviously getting yourself to the best points, and motivate yourself, motivate others. Or actions is understanding where you are and where you're looking to go to. So there's goals and direction. And knowledge is really, for me, you could say it's like know your client, know your product, know your industry, match your client needs to your USPs, but it's also really about awareness in terms of self-awareness, people awareness, market awareness, economic awareness, client awareness, and all that knowledge coming together. And then the energy part is that I have employed many people in my career that have PhDs and MBAs, and they're not necessarily the best people. It's those that wake up with that energy, that zest, that wanting to make a difference in life that really sparks success in some way or form. So that would be my make success acronym, which leads into other acronyms that I have in the book as well.
What jumps out at me about that is the energy. because I think everything else, you can have everything else lined up, but if you do not have that internal energy, that internal passion, nothing is going to happen. But if you do have that, then almost nothing is going to stand in your way. And certain one thing that comes across, Doug, is you have incredible energy and incredible passion. And I just want to thank you for sharing this hour with us and sharing it with me. I've enjoyed it very much, and with our listeners. And just thank you for coming on the show. Where can people find you, and how can you help them?
Well, obviously, I'm on all the socials. LinkedIn would be my main one, and you can contact me on there. Or you can go to dougdgordon.com. That's Doug D and then Gordon, GORDON.com. And you can find lots of different podcasts. And I might even have this podcast as well.
Wouldn't I be honored?
Able to add value to people in some way or form. So there's lots of different podcasts about lots of different topics to be able to help people and add value to people. And there's a few talks on there that I've done on stage, been paid for. So hopefully they might add some value to people that are listening.
Wonderful. Doug, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise, Paul. And if anyone wants to get in touch, it'd be an absolute delight. And I'm looking forward to meeting you soon as well.
Excellent. I look forward to it. Thank you so much.